So in this video, I want to talk about setting up a scene for lighting and rendering of a character, specifically for that nice aesthetic lighting where you've got the bloom and all of the background is blurred and there's bokeh and particles and all of that good stuff. So let's get into it. I have this character I made for a class a few months ago. Firstly, I want to kind of figure out where my camera is going to be. And I know that I want the background to be very blurred. So I'm going to align the camera to view. And we're currently using a 50 millimeter focal length. And I want to make this something bigger, like 80. Just going to make us a lot more zoomed in. And it's also going to help with making sure that we have a shallower depth of field. I might actually go ahead and try 100 for right now. And I'm just going to move this camera until I get it somewhere I want. Don't be afraid to zoom in and really just focus on, capturing the parts of the character that you really want to see. Okay, so I think I like this camera angle as it is right here. So I'm gonna go ahead, go back into rendered mode, and I'm going to change the world color to kind of a grayish blue or a tealish blue, somewhere in there. Just that really like moody aesthetic. I mean, if you really want, you could make it like black and go full on contrast, but I want there to just be a little something in the background. I'm also going to turn on depth of field and select, I guess I'd probably just select one of my eyeballs or something. So now we can see we have that blurring in the backgrounds. I'm going to turn the blades to do 5. And I'm going to turn the ratio to 2. So that will give everything kind of a stretched look. It'll make all the little particles that are blurred have the amount of blades that we set. And the blades are basically like what gives it the amount of edges that the aperture would have. So I want to get some lighting going in here, and I also want to get a background going in here. I think I'm going to put a background in first, and then work with the lighting just a little bit. So I added in this image of a bonfire. I'm going to convert this to a mesh, and I'm going to go to the shader editor, and I'm going to take this mesh, select the shader for it. Let's call this bonfire. And I'm going to add in an emissive shader, plug the color into the color, and plug that into the surface. So now this is going to be giving off some light. And I want to take this, let's see, I want to put it way far back in the scene. And I want it to copy the camera's rotation. So I'm going to select the background, select the camera, and we're going to do copy rotation. All right. So I'm going to make sure this is lined up in a suitable manner. And I want this background to kind of fit the direction the character is working. So I'm going to reverse the direction of it, or invert the object, so that the flame is kind of going in the same direction that the character is already going in. So we can tweak this position later, but I'm just going to leave this kind of somewhere right in here for now. I want to, before we go much further, let's see, I'm going to turn down the f-stop maybe to 1, just to really kind of blur everything that's not the face. And now I want to get some lighting going in here. So going to add in a area light. Now let's start with getting some like direction coming onto this guy. So I think I'm going to light him a little bit from behind with the orange here, so it's going kind of across his chest and over. This is going to help kind of fill out the idea that there is more fire around him. I'm going to Shift D to duplicate this, And I'm going to position one on the other side of him like this. Now I want to put something behind his weapon here, at least like a little bit of light, so we get that feeling of, the weapon is there. In this case, I might actually add in a card or just a literal plane. I'm going to make a new material for it and just keep it white. And I'll just move it up a little bit. So basically all this is going to serve to do is bounce light back up onto the character. And it's very subtle, but you can see how it's, brightening like these darker areas under the arm and on the weapon. I also want to add in another area light back here. I'm going to duplicate this light and get it in the position I want. So this highlight is going to stay on the bottom. It's going to stay orange. I'm going to duplicate this again and bring it up above the weapon. I'm going to angle this light down like so. So now you'll see we get that top light coming down. I'm going to make this light a little more of a neutral color. And because the depth of field has been a little weird, I'm going to actually, instead of doing focus on object, I'm going to do focus by distance and just select a little color picker here, and you just click on where you want, and then I'll select that as the distance. Okay, so I like this composition a lot right now. I want to maybe make this side of his face a little brighter, so I'm going to brighten this light up to maybe 30. I don't know. I want this eye to be the most in focus thing here. Let's try 50. Okay, I'm going to move on from now, and I want to add in some of the particles around the character to really help emphasize that there is depth to this scene. Okay, in the shader editor, I'm going to make a new plane, and I'm going to press M, new collection. Let's call these cinders. I'm going to call this cinder plane, and I'm going to rotate this 90 on the X and make sure that it's up and would be in the camera view. So I'll just put it somewhere over here for right now. I'm going to give it a new material. Let's call this cinder, and I'm going to delete this principled shader. So I'm going to add in a Voronoi texture, and I'm going to plug that in here. So you'll see we'll have these little speckles. I'm going to increase the scale quite a bit, maybe something like this. Then I'm going to add in a color ramp, plug that in between the two, and now we can really dial in on the colors here. So I want to invert these. I want the white to be basically where the cinders are going to be, and the black is going to be transparent. I also want to make sure that we're not getting cinders clipping off the edge here, so I'm going to add in a mix color and plug this color ramp into the B. We're going to make the A completely black. And then I'm going to add in a gradient texture, plug that color into the factor, and we're going to change this to spherical. Now you'll see it's making the sphere like down in this corner, so we're going to add in a mapping node and then a texture coordinate node. Plug the UV into the vector here. We're going to change the X and Y location to 1. We're going to change the scale of the X and Y to -2. So that'll position the sphere directly in the middle of this plane. Now, I don't want this to just be black and white. I want this to actually be something, so I'm going to add in a mix shader and plug this mix color into the factor. Then I'm going to add in a transparent shader, and I want the transparent shader on the top, and then I want to add in an emission shader, and that's going to be on the bottom here. So now you'll see we're going to have little white dots. But I want these to be a lot brighter. I want these to be like 5. I want these to be bright. And I'm going to add in some color to this. But I honestly don't really want this to just be one color back here. I want this to feel like multiple. So I am going to add in a noise texture. And I'm going to plug the factor into the color for the emission. And then I'm going to add in a color ramp, plug that in the color here. I'm going to make these values a little closer to each other, and I'm going to make the white be a nice orange, and maybe the black will be a nice yellow. So that way we'll get like a mix between colors going on here, and you can balance this however you want. I think I want these to be a little bit smaller, so I'm gonna change the scale from 20 to 30. I'm also gonna turn down the random just a little bit, so there's a little bit less of them. Something like here. Yeah, so it feels like that. I'm going to duplicate this plane and drag it up into the foregrounds. So we get some of these in front as well. Maybe we'll duplicate one more and put it sort of mid-ground back in here. Back on this bonfire, I want to make this look just a little more inviting, so I'm going to add in RGB curves here and just mess with the red values a little bit to make the orange of the flames feel a little more alive and glowing. Might as well mess with the blue too. Yeah, something like this. All right, I'm going to render this and then hop over into the compositing tab to keep working on it in there. I'm going to hop over into the compositing tab. I'm going to select use nodes up at the top, and I'm going to hold shift and right click drag through here so I can create a new little node. I'm going to select this little guy and just do control shift click, and that will create a viewer node. If you're having trouble getting that to come up, you can just also type in viewer and pull it up that way. So I want to add in some glare. So I'm going to select glare here. I'm going to change from streaks to bloom, might be nice. Bloom and fog glow are my two go-tos for this sort of thing. I'm going to add in a lens distortion node here. I'm going to do fit and change both these to 0.02. Usually between 0.01 and 0.03 will have good results, but it helps give that image just like a little bit of distortion, which I enjoy. I'm also going to add in an overlay of some film grain. So this is one that I just found online for free. There are many others that you can either purchase or get online for free. So I'm going to use mine here. I'm going to add in a mix color node, plugging it up here. I'm going to plug the image of this film grain into the factor. So now you'll see it's doing something here, but we want this to fit the entire scene. So I'm going to do scale and add in a scale node here and change this from relative to render size. So now you'll see it's fitting the entire thing. So if you want to be able to control the amount of the dust you're seeing or the amount of the grain, you can take this image color that it's playing against or adding against, and if you darken it, it's going to turn down that grain. If you brighten it, it's going to turn it up. Kind of like this nice and crackly like it is right here. And I kind of want to change the size and scale of these backgrounds bokeh specs. So I'm going to go back to the shader editor, and I'm just going to move these way back into the scene, like back over here. I'm going to take these and move them back as well. Maybe even a little further. And I think I want these to be even brighter, maybe like 10. Like I want these to really glow. I think I want to add a few more blades to this. So let's try 9, just so these are a little more rounds. I think that's going to be less distracting. And I really want to blur this background image out even more. So I'm going to duplicate it and just position it a little in front of itself. I'm going to make a new material for it. We'll call this blur. And I'm just going to delete everything in here and add in a refraction node. And if we turn up the roughness, it's going to blur that image back there. I'm also going to turn the IOR up to 10. Also think I might want to move this flame over to the right. So it's a little more on this side of him, so that way the eye is really standing out even more. I'm going to tab into edit mode and select this edge. Just going to press E to extrude it and just extrude it out so that it continues out past this point, so the background's still filled in. I'm going to move these backgrounds, bokehs a little bit so that they fill up the background just a tad bit better, like so. I'm going to move this front one so it's not too much over his face. And I think I'm going to add one more in the front here and just make it nice and small. And I'm going to render this again and see how it's looking. Okay, so I am a little on the fence about having the flames back here still. I think I might make the background be kind of something a little more laid back. And then I might add in some volumetrics to fill in the space around him just a little bit with the lighting. I'm going to select the background plane here. Just go back to shading for now. I'm going to disconnect the texture and I'm just gonna make this just be something very dark. Okay, so I like having this be black back here for this one reason I'm going to show you in just a second. I'm going to delete that refraction node. I'm going to delete that refraction plane because we won't need it anymore since this is going to be a solid backdrop. I want to go into the render settings over here and click down at the bottom where it says color management. I want to change the view transform to filmic and the look to medium high contrast. So it's going to make everything like really, really, really like black or white, like very crunchy. And now I want to add in a new cube. I'm going to press M, put this in new collection. Let's call this fog. So let's make some volumetrics. So I am going to just scale this so it's a bit wider and bigger and make it a lot longer and just position it back in the scene a little bit so that all of those embers and everything that we've been making fits within it. Like so. I'm going to go back to the shading editor. I'm going to make a new material. I'm going to call it fog. Delete the principled shader, add in a volume scatter, plug that into the volume. You'll see now we're getting like a very, very, very dense fog. And I don't really want that. I want that to be much thinner. So I'm going to go for maybe 0.1. See how that's looking? Yeah, somewhere in there. You can play with the anisotropy to help with how the light spills over, depending on what you want. I want this to feel like we're kind of like in the midst of a battle and it's smoky and atmospheric. So I'm going to turn this up a little bit. And I want to change the color in this case. I think I might actually change it to some sort of orange or yellow to really just kind of get going that vibe of like we're inside of this hot, boiling battle. There's flames everywhere. So I want it to be, yeah, somewhere in here. All right, I'm going to re-render this and we'll see what we get. Okay, I like how this is looking. I want to crisp it up a little bit with some color grading. I'm going to add in a color balance node here. And I'm also going to move the lens distortion to the end of this chain so that it distorts the noise grain as well. But I'm going to change this color balance from lift gamma to offset power. And now we'll have a little more control. I want to darken up the shadows just a little bit like this. Maybe brighten the highlights a little as well. And now we can mess with the color of these as well, which is always really fun to do. I think I like something like this, like very nice and contrasty. But I think I like how this is feeling for right now. I want to do more of this method of very depth of field oriented zoom photography for characters because there's a lot you can do. Here is another example of how I set up my first scene of this character, which is very similar, except it's in more of a snowy ice environment instead. So I will probably make a tutorial on how I did this, although it's pretty much exactly the same. I just did little snow particles in a snow background as opposed to this flamey environment, which then informs that the colors have to be different and all this stuff that I'll go into in the next video. But I hope this is helpful for some people. This is how I've been going about doing character portraits and character lighting now, and I've been getting some pretty decent results.